they had somehow managed to start her heart again and to start her breathing again.
The doctor that was standing over me said, "We've put the tube past her lungs into her stomach," and apparently they were pumping air into my stomach instead of into my lungs. And they said that's what was causing all this tremendous pain as I was experiencing as I was coming to, but I knew it wasn't that. I knew I was resisting coming back in the body. I felt a quiver running up and down my body, and I felt rage, and I felt like I didn't belong there. So there I was, and not speaking, and all of a sudden, the line went straight again. Saw this nurse come running in, and she took the portable oxygen tank down, and I watched all this, and I watched her put the mask on me. Even though the line went straight, I still saw this. I saw the bed being pushed down the corridor towards the intensive care unit. That's the last thing I remember seeing before I left my body again. I was immediately in the light, and I was immediately in God's presence again. And he just took me in his arms and very gently said, "Do you understand?" I said, "Yes, I do." And then I came back into the body with just the easiest breath. I signed myself out of the hospital. I left the hospital, and I haven't been back.
3 years later, Catherine's physician reports that she has no trace of Hodgkin's disease. Catherine was recently remarried, and she and her husband Jim have started a new life. Catherine's story is not unique. The out-of-body experience has had a great impact on others who have come close to death.
Over the last several years, I've been involved on various levels with several hundred people who have died, and intimately involved with about 100.
Dr. Charles Garfield is a psychiatrist at the University of California Cancer Research Institute.
A number of years ago, I was teaching a class at UC Berkeley called Psychology of Death. I got a letter from Shelley Ruderman in which he described his experiences some 12 years prior, in which he was dealing with a life-threatening illness. In fact, he was dealing with a seriously advanced lung cancer. The emotional tone of both the letter and the subsequent meetings we had spoke really powerfully to me about the powerful emotional reality they represented in the present.
Doing something that I really like to do.
Yeah. Sheldon Ruderman's encounter with death began in 1960. The experience had a profound effect on him and changed the direction of his life. He now counsels cancer patients like Micah Friedman and believes that the power of the mind can reinforce medical treatment. Thus far, the results have been positive.
When's your birthday again?
January 29th.
Right. Okay, by January 29th, if we keep doing this, keep doing what the doctors tell you to do, it's going to be gone.
Okay.
When I asked my surgeon what he thought, he gave me less than 2 years to live. Like a lot of other cancer patients, my original diagnosis seemed to me unbelievable. I mean, somehow it still seemed a little unbelievable. Less than 2 years to live was somehow not within my emotional capability at that point. So I communicated this back to the doctor, and I said, look, I'm not going to die, and your task is to help me in how not to die. You tell me what to do. But I'm not going, because I have to stick around now.
In my research, approximately 15% of the people I work with have what might be described as death-accepting attitudes. A sense of the basic all rightness of their death, that the death feels appropriate to them. That's a pretty small percentage, 15%. Many other people are angry, furious, in the sense that Dylan Thomas was furious, raging against the dying of the light.
Okay, I survived an 8-hour operation in which my surgeon did what he later described was the best surgery of his life. I came out of that. I felt physically violated, and no one had prepared me for these kind of feelings. 17 days after this major operation, My surgeon finally walked in, and he said, well, Shelley, we got a problem. We got a mechanical thing that we're going to have to correct. There's a valve that's fouled up in there, and it's making some kind of mess. But it's really a minor correction. We'll have to take you back in the operating room. But it's such a minor thing, we won't have to give you a shot. They took me back into the operating room, and I was on the table now, sort of face down. And since this is a teaching hospital, there are like now about 25 students in the room surrounding the table. And I couldn't believe what was happening. He was cutting me open, I was wide awake. One of the things I originally was trained in myself was engineering. What was perfectly obvious to me was that of the 25 people in the room, very few could see the surgery. So what I did was sort of like a little engineering thing. In my mind, I built a board coming out of the wall and back of me, which would go right over the table, right above the body. I'd be able to look down, no one would block the view. It was just, you know, mind play. No sooner had I thought of that when my consciousness was on the ceiling watching this operation. I have to say at this point that the guy that I was at that time was somebody who thoroughly disbelieved in anything that was psychic. I was a very scientific character. I was an atheist, very pragmatic. I didn't believe anything I didn't see. Here I was experiencing something that was impossible. My conscience was on the top of the room, watching them operate on my body. The view looking down was very clear when it came to the people watching the surgery. I could see all of the students very clear. When it got to the outlines of the table that I was on, it got fuzzy. When it got to the outlines of my body, it got fuzzier yet. And when it got to the wound itself, where he was actually operating, I could not see.
People have the sense of leaving their bodies, of rising above their bodies, and of drifting throughout the room, of being aware of images, of being able to see the room, to see the world from a different point of view, to be able to see their own bodies lying in the bed, and in essence, to be detached from the physical body.
Now, about every 15 minutes or so, my surgeon asked me how I was doing. Somehow, I had to be back in the body to answer those questions. And I would say, all right, and then I'd get out again. I mean, while there was something going off someplace that said, this is impossible, the rest of it felt completely normal.